Max Verstappen is now a two-time Formula One world champion. His victory in Suzuka at the weekend has sealed his second title in 2 years. He's become the youngest ever back-to-back world champion in Formula One history. So the question I kind of want to pose today is, how far can he go in Formula One? What legacy can he leave behind him, by the time he's finished? He's just turned 25 years old and he's already in the top 6 for all-time wins in Formula 1. And the guys that are ahead of him are Formula 1 royalty. You got Alain Prost, you got Ayrton Senna, Sebastian Vettel, Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. I think there is a genuine chance that you could be looking at a guy who could break the records of all of those drivers ahead of him. Assuming a couple of things happen. Firstly, he's got to make the right career choices. I think you look at somebody like Fernando Alonso, who I think probably had the talent to win 6 or 7 world titles, only ended up winning 2 because a lot of the career choices he made just seemed to lead him away from world championships. He left Renault after 2 world championships and went to McLaren. Things went sour there pretty quickly. He went to Ferrari and they made some, while relatively competitive cars, were never capable of winning a world championship, although he did bring it probably a lot closer than he would have expected that car to go. He goes back to McLaren and you had the whole thing about GP2 engines. It was absolute shambles. So if Max Verstappen is to challenge the likes of Hamilton, the likes of Schumacher and win 7 world championships, he's going to have to make the right career choices. Now, he may just need to stay at Red Bull for the rest of his career, and that could, bring him the cars or the machinery that he needs to win those world titles. But it is obviously very difficult for teams to stay as consistent as that. Mercedes and Ferrari have done it in the past where they've gone, 7-8 years challenging for titles consistently. And Red Bull have always been there or thereabouts in the last 10 or 15 years. But can they keep that up for another 10 or 15 years? Maybe. But that is kind of the first and foremost thing that he needs to do in order to challenge the likes of Schumacher, the likes of Hamilton in terms of championships and career wins. Next thing he's got to do is keep the hunger. I think I always look to somebody like Kimi Räikkönen, who, Kimi, pre and post World Championship in 2007 were 2 different beasts. The one before 2007 was rapid, constantly challenging the likes of Schumacher, the likes of Alonso, and then Hamilton obviously in his first year in the sport. Then after he won the world title, it seemed like he seemed to be doing it more for the fun rather than the competitive aspect of it. Now, I don't necessarily think that Max will maybe fall away in the way Kimi did. Now look, Kimi still won some races afterward and he still showed speed at times, but the consistency was never the same after he won that world title. The foot maybe came off the gas a little bit. With Max, he's so consistent at the minute. Can he have the desire to keep that up in the same way that Lewis Hamilton did for the last 10 or 15 years? I'm not sure. We've heard him talk in the past that once he's won world title, he's kind of achieved it all. So I'm not necessarily certain that breaking all these records is something that necessarily interests him. Do I think he's got the talent to do it? Yes, absolutely. You look at the guy, wins a race at 18, he's in Formula 1 at 17. He's, the first year he's given a car capable of competing for a title, he goes and wins it. Granted, we all know how controversial Abu Dhabi was last year, but I still think he was the best driver across the season. He's absolutely smashed the competition this season, won it with 4 races to go. Without reliability in the first 2 rounds, probably done earlier. So I think if he makes the right career choices and keeps his motivation up, I think he could be Lewis Hamilton's biggest challenger to his own record of 103 wins in Formula 1. If he sticks around for the next 10 or 15 years, which again is something that maybe he won't want to do, then I could definitely see him challenging that record. He's got laser-like focus, he's unemotional, and something I'll be talking about in my next podcast when I refer to Charles Leclerc. He's not emotional. Charles Leclerc strikes me as somebody that's very, very overly emotional in the car, whereas Max is machine-like. He's so focused. He doesn't seem to care. He's able to block out all the noise. I think if he sticks around, which I'm not sure he will for the next 10 or 15 years, there's every possibility that we're looking at the greatest driver in Formula 1 history at the end of it. But please, as always, do let me know in the comments below what you think of that. Do you think that Max Verstappen has the ability to be up there with the Hamiltons and the Schumachers once his career ends? Do you think he'll stick around long enough for that to come to reality? Do you think he'll make the right career choices and keep the motivation up to challenge those records? Or do you think that he'll be happy with his lot and he'll leave in a couple of years' time with maybe less championships than his talent would suggest? Let me know down below, and tune back in next week when I talk to you about Charles Leclerc.